Good evening. Thank you for coming to hear about this wonderful project that we're pursuing. Right now, it's a conceptual project, and we're looking to cooperate with SwiftMud in funding the design and construction of the Quail Hollow Boulevard project. And right now, I'd like to go to our PowerPoint. All right, and here you can see a picture of Quail Hollow Boulevard itself. This was during a period of flooding. By show of hands, have you ever seen flooding worse than this on Quail Hollow Boulevard? All right, there's at least three. I haven't personally, but I figured that some of you had.
You can still drive through this one.
All right, and sometimes you cannot, right? Yeah.
Just click on that. There you go.
Thank you. Okay. Whenever we have a big rain event in the middle of the county, you're going to see this sort of thing in the Quail Hollow neighborhood generally. Quail Hollow is, as you're all aware, I'm sure, it's fairly flat, doesn't drain well, and so water has to stack up in the roads and the yards and sometimes in the houses before it can get out and get to the Cypress Creek. Notably, 1998, how many of you were here in 1998 when we had like the year-long El Nino? Had an April that was more like a heavy August, you may recall. Well, 98, 2003, and 2017 Irma passed by. We had severe flooding in the neighborhood. And for some of those, there were multiple road washouts. That'll help.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so flooding goes from the roads to the yards and to the homes. How many of you have had trouble with your septic systems because of flooding? How many of you have gotten water into your yards? Yeah. All right. Has anyone gotten water into their home? Thank you. All right, so when we have a normal summer rainfall event, do you experience flooding roads and yards? Yes, you would say yes? Next slide, please. Now, according to the model, in a 25-year event, which would be the result of approximately 9 or 10 inches of rain in a 24-hour period, the flooding that would result will last approximately 2 days. Does that square with your experience? Longer, all right. And the reason that it's lasting for a long time is because it goes back to what I said before. The neighborhood does not drain well. You know, water has to fight to get out, and it takes it a while to make that fight. Next slide, please. Okay, what we're seeing on this slide is the what we call the floodplain, a floodplain map of Quail Hollow. So the blue areas there represent the areas that would be expected to be wet, inundated, in a 100-year event, so 12 and a half inches in a 24-hour period. That's a design storm. We never actually get design storms, we get natural storms. But, you know, this would approximate what we expect to happen about one time every 100 years, or having a 1% chance of happening in any given year. Of course, you know, nature doesn't read the textbook, so we get what we get. So you see, there's a lot of blue in that picture.
That was the commissioner. She just logged in with her microphone on.
All right. So what we have found is that when we would get a 100-year event, we would expect approximately 150 people to have no access to their homes. They'd either be unable to get out of their homes vehicularly. I mean, you could get in a rowboat, you could swim, or to get to their homes if they were not at home at the time. And there'd be about 75 structures that'd be at risk of flooding, getting water inside the home. With our plan, we're expecting to be able to remove 10. And that's a small number. It is, I agree. But it's better than 0. And if we can remove 10 homes from the floodplain in a 100-year event, then in the 25-year event, how many can we remove that would have been at risk of flooding, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? In other words, if we get what Houston got a couple of years ago, the whole area is going to be flooded pretty much regardless of what we do. But if we get something, lesser, then you'll see a better result. Next slide, please. All right. Now, this is a map of what we're planning to do up on the north end and what I'm calling Otter Creek. And if you look on the yellow there, see that there? That is a tributary to Cypress Creek that I'm calling Otter Creek. Right now, that flows across Apple Blossom Lane and then gets into what's known as the Soho property here. So what we were planning to do is improve that channel and improve that crossing there at Quail Hollow Boulevard, improve these crossings, Apple Blossom Lane. And then add channelization to give the flow multiple ways out. And then lastly, oops, sorry, that was on me. And then lastly, to right here provide storage, which would give us attenuation. And by attenuation, I mean allow the water a place to go while we're shuttling out of the neighborhood so that it doesn't cause adverse impacts downstream. So go over here, stay here for a while, relax, and then go on about your business. That's attenuation. Treatment, so that the pollutants that naturally come with stormwater runoff have a chance to drop out, be filtered out before it gets to the Cypress Creek. And then also wetland mitigation. So to do the project, we will have to affect some wetlands, and we want to give back what we've taken, so to speak. So if we affect a wetland here, then we want to kind of create a wetland over here. And then in the south, so this is a two-pronged project in concept. On the Alligator Creek, it's a little bit simpler. We're just looking at improving the channel pretty much throughout the run there. And then right along here, raising Quail Hollow Boulevard and providing a much bigger conveyance, a culvert across Quail Hollow Boulevard, so that water can get across Quail Hollow Boulevard better and not go over the top of it, as we saw in that opening picture. And I have a question. Teresa, we have a question. Would you mind, please? Over here. State your name, please, and
John
your address,
Tillman.
if you like. I'm sorry, back in the back.
John Tillman, 5953 Sandy Lane. So what we're looking at right there, the yellow, where you're going to make the improvements on Quail Hollow Boulevard, it's my understanding that's approximately 4,000 linear feet that I've noticed there's been some clearing there. Is there any plans to do more as far as increasing the depth or width or volume of flow in that area, or is that done, that part of the project?
Okay, I think you're making reference to a maintenance effort that we recently completed in Alligator Creek.
Correct.
Yeah, and that was a maintenance effort. That was not an improvement effort.
Okay.
And that effort is done. We've completed that. And we did that because we noticed that there was sedimentation in Alligator Creek and the bottom was rising up and it was not carrying water the way it had in the past. And flooding events are getting more severe, so we went in to maintain it. The idea behind this project would be not to maintain it, but rather to improve it. So, to answer your question is, we've completed the maintenance work, but this project would be much more extensive and it would constitute an improvement, reworking the system rather than just maintaining the system.
Yeah, and that's great. So what I was wondering too, and I appreciate that. So you can see it flows there. Obviously, there's a disconnect in the channelization because there's a wetland area there. I'm assuming that's dispersed throughout the wetland area. Yeah, in that area. Then it's going to be pick up and go further down. As you exit out the left side of that picture, I see a little bit of a disconnect between there and where it picks up in the top picture around the Deacon's Loop area. Does the bottom picture exiting the left pick up right there?
Well, I think there's a bit of overlap there, right? I have Decron in the audience, and perhaps he can address the question. Decron Kalajian with Land and Water. He is our consultant on the project.
Hi. If you're pointing to the bottom figure there where the disconnect is in the yellow line, those are pipe crossings. So at certain location, the ditch is improved wherever it needs some culverts. It will be connected with culverts, then it picks up again. So the idea is to provide expanded capacity throughout the entire conveyance all the way to the outfall going out to the wetlands, the Alligator Creek.
What I'm saying is I'm just not seeing Deacon's Loop on the map. I see Store Boulevard up in the top of, of that bottom section. But I don't see Deacon's Loop in there. That's one of our biggest areas that have a problem on Quail Hollow Boulevard.
Can you bring up Google Earth?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to bring up Google Earth. And can you zoom in on the area? I'll help you once you get close. I have no idea where you are right now. Yeah, I do. Okay. So, and let's see more of the west. All right. Okay. And then a little bit more. All right, now zoom in. Can you also rectify the view so we're looking straight from overhead? If you go to view, reset.
This is the Chrome version.
So you don't have that option? Right, we'll just move it back.
Well,
So, yeah,
There you go.
there
But
we go.
now,
Thank you.
all right. So, John, are we, about where you want to proceed?
One more map on the screen.
Okay.
That's a good
All
idea.
right, so yeah, I see right here, so we've got, in reference to your map here, yeah, I can see this is Store Boulevard. We've got this here that picks up. And I'm trying to find Deacon's Loop on here. Can you do an overlay showing the streets or the names on there?
Turn on the street names, please, and zoom in, please, a little bit. Thank you, Taylor. Well, I'll turn on the street name.
One moment.
If it won't,
I think this is it up here.
Deacon's Loop, yeah, okay.
You got it?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
because we could go to it. No, worry about it.
Hey, there we go.
There we go.
Someone made a comment that there's too much construction around the area, somebody said, can they make?
There we go, Deacon's Loop, Deacon's Loop.
Yeah, so what we have right here, the reason I'm mentioning it is I promise there's a gentleman named Butch,
Yes,
who lives here in this home right here.
okay.
This one's better.
They're in a really bad way right there. So
Yeah.
I just was wondering here, it looks like it's, doesn't have much.
I can send you the link.
From the channel, but it looks like it does go up to there, right? Because this area right here, he's getting a lot of flooding. What's happening is water is coming.
On the
rather-
north side, yeah.
Yeah, from
Yes.
Quail Hollow Boulevard,
Yes,
and it's
yes.
running down the street
Yes.
into his properties, and everyone is getting flooded out. So he just wanted me to mention it.
Yeah, you know which one he's talking about, the third crossing at Quail Hollow. Okay,
It might as well
so,
be 100
there's about 3 crossings now. We first did take a look at the northern crossing there, And then we looked at the southern crossing. There's one more crossing right here. Do you see all this wetland over here?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of water coming into the wetland. There's one more crossing. And this crossing actually is draining right there by Deacon Loop. Now this,
I don't see any flood, it's all duckweed, it's non-contentious.
yeah, but this point here, the water that's coming out, what this project is doing is improving the conveyance and lowering the flooding over here by about close to half a foot. Okay, 3/10 to half a foot is lowering. Now, there's another component that we're gonna take a look into it, is what's happening with this crossing here too. Yes, so that may be the third piece of the Quail Hollow Boulevard that needs to be raised and the crossing.
Thank you, Dick.
So, John, did that answer your question? Yeah, it did. I just hope they add that to it, because I think that's a big problem that flooding that needs to be addressed. As a whole.
Good job with the passing of
Yeah.
Can we go back to the PowerPoint?
Yep. Just click on, make sure it's the right.
Okay, so this slide represents the real estate that we would probably have to acquire to make this project happen in the north. We're looking at the north right now. So in the green, you're seeing easements that we would need. And in the purple, you're seeing a potential acquisition that we would need. Now, when it comes to projects like this, capital improvement project, for stormwater in this case, if the county needs to acquire a drainage easement to make the project happen, and the project is going to benefit the property, then the county will not pay for that drainage easement. So in order to make this project work, the county would have to acquire all the drainage easements that it needs. When it comes to acquiring property, that's a different story. Obviously, if the county is acquiring the property, the county is going to expect to pay for the acquisition of the property. Next slide, please. All right, here we see the real estate that would be required in the southern portion. That's almost all drainage easements. You can see it's all green except for one little piece, one that would represent an acquisition. And the county has already acquired some of the easements needed down here in the south. Next slide, please. Okay.
Let's see.
About the drainage.
Is this mic on?
It can be.
Well, while we're looking that up, so about, just to clarify about the real estate acquisition, we need to acquire land, not a drainage easement, but a land in fee simple, for flood attenuation. Remember, that's what I talked about before, where we have to hold the water that we're pulling off the neighborhood for a time before we send it downstream so it doesn't cause problems downstream. Wetland creation, where we impact the wetland, we need to mitigate that. And then water quality improvement. We need to acquire drainage easements, generally speaking, for channel improvement and for channel creation. So channel creation means create a channel where there is none today, and channel improvement, improve an existing channel. A lot of these channels are natural. Some of them are man-made. But in either case, they're not what we would build if we were building a channel. They're not straight. Their banks are typically steep. They're narrow. And then just the bottom bullet point there that emphasizes the county cannot pay for drainage easements where the underlying property owner or the underlying property benefits from the project, I should say. All right, so there's a question online, I understand?
Yeah. One person asked, will you make Alligator Creek deeper?
Will we make Alligator Creek deeper? I'll let Dikaran field that one.
Not necessarily.
Like,
The creek itself, for most of its length, is fairly deep, and we don't expect to make it much deeper. I think we're going to increase the capacity of the creek by widening it and changing the side slopes.
Any other questions?
One person thought too many mics are not muted, too much feedback, cannot hear the questions or answers clearly.
It's just like when you were talking under the TV, just bring a microphone with you.
Okay, all right. Next slide, please. Okay, so what are the benefits of this project? Benefits of this project are flood relief, accessibility, and by flooding relief, we're reducing, structural inundation, we're reducing yard flooding, and reducing road flooding and road damage. So in order to make the project work, we would need cooperation from many stakeholders. And not in any particular order, the stakeholders would be the SwiftMud, and we have SwiftMud here in the audience tonight, the county, residents, and developers. So we have representatives of all four of those groups in the audience here this evening and online. Next slide, please. Okay, now let's hear your questions. Thank you, Rich. Appreciate that.
I live on Quail Hollow Boulevard,
What's your name,
There-
please?
right at 7239, which is just before you make the curve. There's a drainage ditch that goes underneath Quail Hollow Boulevard and goes all the way back to the section where you want to drain or make larger.
Can you put the Pasco mapper back up? Is this in the south, Alligator Creek, or in the north, Otter Creek?
Just before you turn and go on Sandy Lane, I'm right there, over the house with the funny-looking driveway. That's my son's house. Go across the street.
Here?
To your right,
There?
to your right and down. Okay, I own that piece right there. There's a drainage ditch that goes between me and the neighbor to the right. It goes 1,200 feet back to that drainage ditch in the back. Nobody has cleaned that out in 40 years. My husband, who's 81, and the neighbor next door, who turns 100 next week, used to clean it. They can't do it anymore. I called in February because no water can get that comes down Quail Hollow and should go back to that can get through. So is that going to be cleaned also?
All right, that's a good question. Does the county own an easement over that?
I have no clue.
I
They
suspect.
cleaned it out maybe 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Some workers came out there and cleaned it, but they haven't been back since.
Yeah, well, I don't know that, so I'm not going to speculate from the microphone. But if the county does not own an easement over it, then the county would not have maintenance responsibility for it. And even if the county had an easement, wouldn't necessarily have maintenance responsibility. So you're asking who would clean it out?
Well, the county's got a concrete thing that they put under the road that drains to there. That was in there when I bought the place 40 years ago. So I'm assuming that that's part of the county property.
Oh, well, we can answer that. Can you select on the property owner right there? Don't say who it is, but tell me if it's the county that owns that property.
Not the county.
Not the county. All right, so the county does not own that property.
I mean, if I have to get permission, that's not a problem, but it needs to be cleaned out because when they cleaned the ditch on the other side, on the north side of Quail Hollow about a month ago, but they didn't clean the side where it drains to, so it doesn't do any good.
Yeah, well, Swiftmud is here. Swiftmud, can you answer the question, can a resident clean out a ditch on their property without getting permission from Swiftmud?
That's a compliance issue. That's outside of, I'm sorry, miss, that's a compliance issue and that's outside my specific area. I'm in the watershed management where we deal with modeling and flood protection
right.
projects. So,
Sorry about that, to put you on the spot.
I'll look into that for you, ma'am. I'll get your information after the meeting.
Thank you, Ann. Sorry about that. And then next.
I was
over
just,
here.
hey, Donald, this is Therese. I was going to follow up to Ann.
Oh, hey, I'm
Just
sorry. This is
reiterate what
Therese.
she said.
This is Therese Power from the Swiftmud. She's on the line. Thank you, Therese. Go ahead.
Sorry, I know it can be kind of clunky with some of us online. I appreciate that question, and Ann's correct. We can coordinate with our regulatory division to make sure that that's okay for you to do that on your property. And let us just confirm that before we say yes or no today. Appreciate the question.
Thank you, Therese.
My name is Jennifer Sini. I live on Apple Blossom Lane. And Alligator Creek got cleaned out 15 to 20 years ago by the county with our cooperation. We went around door to door and got people to sign access to properties. So it can be done, but it was a huge effort and it took months. And the county had to cooperate with Swiftmud, of course. And we got things like that clean, but she's right. And it leads to a bigger question. You're going to do all these improvements. Who's going to take care of them? In other words, who does the maintenance, and do your easements include access anytime you need it?
Okay, excellent questions. The first question, if this project goes to fruition, who would maintain the project? The answer would be the county. So if the county is building a capital improvement project, then the county is going to assume maintenance responsibility for said project. Now, does a drainage easement confer the right to the county to access the property at any time? That would depend on the language in the drainage easement. Now, typically, drainage easements do not restrict access to certain hours, but that doesn't mean that they can't. And I can tell you that the county is not in the habit of entering drainage easements at 3 o'clock in the morning willy-nilly. But if we need to enter a drainage easement at 3 o'clock in the morning, we probably will do so, as long as we have the drainage easement. All right, next question.
Donald Carey.
Hello?
Hi, it's Commissioner Fitzpatrick. I was wondering, the drainage ditch that the lady was just speaking of before, the last lady, on
Yep.
Quail Hollow and heading south, does that drainage ditch connect to this project?
Oh, undoubtedly, it connects to the project. Let's take a better look at it. Can you find it again, gents? Yeah, right here. So this is the ditch you're talking about, right? All right.
Yes.
So let's zoom out a little bit, please. So it's running, looks like from the northeast to the southwest, and it looks like it intersects Alligator Creek right here. Does that look right? And then once it intersects Alligator Creek, it's going to head due west like a choo-choo train headed for Cypress Creek. And going to run off. So yeah, it would intersect our project right here. Can you see that, Commissioner?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So that drainage ditch is going to connect also, then will the county be cleaning out those drainage ditches to continue the flow of the water? Because I know she stated the gentleman's 100 and the other one's 92 years old. So they're not going to be able to clean out that drainage ditch. Does that mean the county will be cleaning out all of the drainage ditches to connect and have an easy flow pattern to where the new retention ponds will be going?
The answer is yes, if that is part of the project, and it could become part of the project. And our consultant's right here. He's heard this. So I'm sure he will take a look at this and see if, making that part of the project makes sense.
Thank you, Donald.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner. All right. Any, yes. We have another question.
Yes, Eric Page, Schutz and Bowen. The question is there anywhere in the materials that identifies how large the various drainage easements are? I know that I've got a packet here that in the back has some information I haven't seen put up there tonight. So I'm wondering how wide some of these easements are. And the other part of that question is, you said that the county had already acquired some easements on the southern part. Curious how those were acquired or if they already existed.
Okay, thank you. As to the width of the easements, as a general rule, you'd be looking at something less than 100 feet, something more than 50 feet. It'd be a case-by-case basis, and it would be fine-tuned as we go along. And I'll let DeCron speak to that further. And as to your second point, how did the county acquire existing easements? Some easements were recorded on plats, and some easements were recently acquired by property owners that granted the county easement so that we could do the Alligator Creek maintenance project that we recently completed. And DeCron, do you want to address the question as to sizing of the easements?
Yeah, just like you mentioned, I mean, it varies from location to location, but one thing that we looked at it's mainly to minimize the easement requirements. What you see there in the drawing is the width of the channel itself, but then in addition to that, also the county would require access lane so they can get to that channel to maintain it. That's going to be further maybe refined during the design phase, but that gives you a good idea in terms of the width at different locations.
Represented
Yes, in those sections there. Now, if you look at the plan view, they have lines and defines, like, let's say section A is the location of section A. Then you can see, let's say, section B and the location of it. If you want, I can take you over the drawings.
We're going to see if we can pull it up here.
Can we pull?
Yes. DeCron, say stop when we hit it.
Okay.
Slow down. Right there?
No,
Somewhat the north?
the section views. Oh, you don't have the section views there, do you?
No, I don't.
No, you don't.
Well, we
Okay,
could,
but go back up. I can see here some of the section. Yeah, you see like the EE, DD, and then the CC, FF. So the F in the back relates to that F location.
no, we can access those. We have them on hard drive here.
Okay.
So, and DeCron, stop us when we get to where he wants to be.
Okay. Okay, you can stop it here. So the biggest impact is going to be on section A, which is what Donald called the other creek. So if you see that one there, it's being expanded. What's about from -20 to 20? That's going to be a 40. Yeah, that's going to be a 40 feet wide channel there. The section A, that's what the other creek is on the top. So that's going to, but that has a floodplain of a wetland there.
30-foot bottom, and what's the?
Okay, there we go. Now you can see it better. So it's 30-foot bottom and a little over 40 feet on the top there. Okay, so you can see what the top is now. And the section B is that ditch that's going from Otter Creek down to the retention basin. And that's an existing ditch that's going to be widened also. So that shows you how much that's going to be widened. It's going to be a 15-foot bottom and it's going to go almost from -15 to +20. That's going to be 35 feet wide on the top. Okay?
You want us to drain all these Pasco?
Yeah.
Well, as you told us earlier, there's a lot of water there that's sitting, and the intent of this project is that when the water sits there, for it to move. And we need these conveyance systems for it to move. Otherwise, it's going to be sitting there.
And to answer your question more directly, we won't do the project if the community doesn't want it. The purpose of the project is to help the community. If the community says, no, thank you, we don't want your help, the project won't happen, plain and simply. So if this generally doesn't sound like a good idea, doesn't sound like something you want, easements that you don't want to give the county, the project won't happen. But if you do want it to happen, you don't mind giving the easements, I'm talking generally, obviously everybody's an individual, then the project may well go forward. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name's Perry Meggs.
Hey, Perry.
And we talk about Otter Creek. I live at 25932 Apple Blossom Lane. Now, you're telling me that ditch is going to be how wide?
The one that's going north-south,
Yes.
that's going to be, what did we say, 35 feet wide on top.
How's that going to happen? That's a utility easement. Power runs down there. It's going to affect my septic system. I've got fence all down through there, and I have a building on there.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do about that?
No, we'll take a look at all those details. All those details during the design phase. Now, this is the big picture element for us. What we're saying is that what's going to take for us to move the water. Okay, so those little details where the fences are, where we need to add little pipes, where there's a common easement with the power line, all those details will be looked at it as we're doing the design. We're so early on in the stage now, the question is how we're going to move the water from point A to point B. That's what we're looking at this point. And then those will be resolved. And later on, we'll have more communication with you all in terms of those details, how it will impact your property, how much encroachment there would be, and so forth.
Well, I'll tell you, I just got this 3 days ago.
Okay.
Okay. If it wasn't for Lane Mendelson knowing about it ahead of time, I'm just finding out about it. Notification from the county. It's kind of upsetting not to have a little more notice, what you're doing. And one other question I want to ask, these 2 retention ponds, these are going to take care of the new development in all of Quail Hollow?
No. These are not for new development. These retention ponds.
Where's the runoff going?
They're enough. They have their own ponds. They have their own ponds, and they can eventually discharge it to the system, but they have their own ponds for them to slow down the water.
That was another question.
The alligator
You got
creek-
these 2 retention ponds. Where's the overflow going to go on these retention ponds if they fill up?
Well,
When they fill up, they go back to the wetlands over here in Alligator.
All low enough, that's not going to come back into.
No. So the retention ponds, it's kind of like a parking lot for cars.
No,
like
it
down-
is. I'm in
You're just
construction,
going to slow it
that's
down,
why.
yeah.
That's why I kind of know
Yeah.
about it.
Now, one thing that's happening, and this is why we need the retention pond, as we open up the channels to get the water moving, it's going to move up here to the floodplain. Now, as the floodplain here, it's already flooding, the flood stages will rise. As the flood stages will rise, we'll back up back into it. So one thing we're trying to do, as we're trying to move the water faster to the system, and for it not to raise the floodplain here too much, we're going to put the retention pond for it to slow it down. You see what I'm saying? So we're getting the water to move fast, sit here, wait for a little bit. As this goes down, get back into the system. That's all we're trying to do with that.
I have one more question. I noticed on here, there's 2 other property owners that this ditch is going to be running on. And I don't see their names even listed on here, where there's butts up to my property.
Okay, we can take a look at that.
So I don't know if these people, they're probably not even aware of this either. Be nice if you all let everybody know what you're doing.
Sure.
All right, so I can address your question or your concern about fences. So if anyone, this applies to anyone, if you have a fence that runs across or along land that the county is asking a drainage easement over, and you grant the county that drainage easement, the county will move your fence. And if it's a dilapidated fence, we'll build a new fence on the edge of the drainage easement if it runs along it. Or a fence across it. We could even put a fence back across the drainage easement.
What about the trees that are going to be
Perhaps.
eliminated?
All right, so if we were eliminating trees for the drainage way, we would look at replanting along the banks, but outside the flowway and outside the drainage easement per se, because we don't want any more drainage easement than necessary. And so we wouldn't have room to put a tree within the drainage easement.
It's kind of hard to tell on this picture where the center line of the ditch is. That's what I want to know. I want to know what's going to affect my.
Of course you do, and anyone would. And so before asking you to sign over a drainage easement, we would first have a conversation with you, determine your willingness. And then if you're willing, as any individual, to grant the county a drainage easement, we would draw up a sketch of a legal description, show that to you and say, this is our understanding of what you're willing to grant the county. And at that point, you can say, no, that's not what I had in mind. You can say, yeah, that's it right there.
Is there any way of maybe doing a directional through certain parts of the property where you didn't have to dig a ditch? If you see where my property is and what it butts up to, you know, there's the other people's property it's a swamp area in there.
Can we zoom in on
But then when you get up to my house is where I have one building, and then the other neighbor that's on here that's not even listed, they probably don't even know about this, but they have a building that comes up to it too. Is it possible to do a directional or something underneath those buildings or not?
A lot of different options are possible. The fact
Throwing
is
that
yeah,
out.
no, there's the possibility of doing a lot of different things. The fact is that at this point, we haven't looked at those possibilities because we haven't looked at the elements very closely to see what are the design options and how much encroachment it would be into the property, and if it's going to be split between two properties and what are the features out there. So we haven't even done a survey out there. So now the main thing that we did, we looked at the big picture. So the way the design would work, now we're looking at the 50,000 feet picture. Eventually, we're going to go down to the 10,000 feet, then we're going to get down to the ground level as we do the construction. So there's going to be some follow-up meetings on this. There's going to be, the idea is that this project cannot happen without public's consent in terms of giving out easements. So if there's that consent and the project's going to move forward, those little details we'll look at and we'll try to work with you on those elements to minimize the impact, because we want to minimize the hardship on the residents out there in terms of how much they're giving in terms of land or what's impacting out there. We're very sensitive to trees, to large trees that's been established for years. The question is, have we looked at each and every tree now? No, we have not. But we will be looking at all those elements. We'll be looking at the fences and how it's going to impact and how it's going to impact the cost of the construction. All that will be looked at. Now is the big picture element. We're going to have to move the water somehow. For us to move the water, we're going to widen the ditches, we're going to improve the bridges and elevate the road. So once this project goes into place, Quail Hollow Boulevard and Apple Blossom Lane will not flood at all. Are we being able to protect all the homes? No. As Donald showed, maybe 10 to 15 homes is going to go outside the floodplain. The rest will see a lot of relief in flooding, but not necessarily see full proof. But we're going to have to move the water from that place. That's kind of what's happening now.
And Mr. Meigs, I understand your concerns, and just let me reiterate that this project would require the cooperation of four major stakeholders, four major types of stakeholders: the county, SwiftMud, residents, and developers. You represent that one wing of that, the residents. And the county, you know, as I stated before, is looking to undertake this project for the benefit of the Quail Hollow residents. So the residents you're the party that would be benefiting from the project. If you, the residents, don't want the project won't happen.
It's not that I don't want that.
I understand.
I just don't want a 50-foot wide ditch. You know, I've been out there almost 30 years. You know, I've worked hard to get that property. I don't want to lose it either.
No, of course you don't want to lose. We don't want you to lose it, which is the reason for one of the reasons for the project is to prevent, flooding that would make you lose your house, for instance, or experience damage to your house, or not be able to access your house. So have I zoomed in on your property, sir?
Mine, but yeah, it's right there. Oh, go back.
Right here?
there. Yes.
Is that it? Okay. Now, can you zoom in a little bit more? And did you want to explain on the picture what you were talking about?
Yeah, I mean, you can see where our property's split. Over on the right, go to the right and up a little. That's all swampy over there. So it'd be beneficial to move it over that way, I would think. You can't see my building, because it's in the trees there. That's the house there. If you go over to the right, I've got a building right in the corner of that property, back up,
Up here?
right in there, but it's down further.
Oh, okay.
You got to stay in with it right there, back over to the right. That's where my building is, right there.
Well, is this your property line here?
Yes,
So it's right up against your east property line?
yes.
And
Plus my drain field runs out to that too.
all right. So that's a building that's not a domicile?
No, it's just a building, storage building,
Storage building. Could it be relocated?
I imagine.
All right, so if that building lies within a drainage easement that the county would acquire, then the county would relocate the building out of the drainage easement.
That's why I was questioning where the actual center line of the ditch was. So if it's 50 feet, I know how far it's going to be.
Well, so what I'm telling you is, if you have a building that's sitting in what the county needs as a drainage easement, then the county will relocate that building for you. If you have a fence, the county will relocate the fence.
Okay, what about the sewer?
We'll talk.
I'm saying my drain lines run out there. That's the problem we're going to run into.
All right.
You can't tell me where the center of that ditch is going to be, then I can look over and see what I've got.
Well, here's what I can tell you with assurance, that we will not adversely affect your septic system without mitigating it somehow. So either we would move the drainage easement or we would move your septic system.
Yeah, it's going to be one of the two, and then we're not going to let the septic system drain into the surface water body too. So there's a couple little things there. We'll take a look at it. Now, also the other thing too that I want to mention there, you have intermittent ditch there. It's not connected all the way from top to the bottom, but there's some parts of it that has a ditch. So one thing we were thinking about it, the center line of that to be kind of in the center of the property lines from this side and that side, so that not one property owner will have the full impact of it. So all we're talking about is widening that by another 10 to 15 feet. Now, the question is that, have we looked very closely where the septic tanks are, the fences are? No, not yet. So we'll take a look at all those details. We'll work accordingly. If you look on the east side, there's more wetlands.
If you were the homeowner, it would be your concern too.
Oh, definitely. Oh, definitely. Yes, sure.
And go back to point one. The county does not want to make an imposition on you. We're trying to improve your quality of life out there in Kohala. And so the last thing we want to do is to degrade your quality of life. Yes, Ann. Where's your other microphone? Oh.
Donald, you spoke to the high-risk floodplain, which is what we saw in blue, and the reductions there. But the community will also be, per our conversations, is there other benefits like the 25-year storm event, the smaller storm events will see reduced roadway flooding, things like that? Maybe speak to that a little bit.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. It's a good question. And as I hinted at before, we don't always get a 100-year flooding event, and that's a good thing. But every summer, you get flooding events out in Quail Hollow, right? So with this project, you would see improvement over what would have happened otherwise with this project in even the lesser events. In a small event, nobody's flooding, nobody's house is getting flooded. So that would be the same before and after. In a 25-year event, correct me if I'm wrong, Decron, we see some inundation, and does that inundation all go away in the 25-year event in this concept plan, the way it's currently laid out?
Not necessarily the 25-year event, but one thing that you would see, those summer floodings, that's going to be pretty much taken care of. Those smaller storm event, the nuisance flooding things. The other thing too that's going to take care of it for the 25-year event, the access roads. There might be some yards that may have some water in them, but the access roads will not be flooding from the three roads that I mentioned, the Quail Hollow from the bottom all the way up to the turn on top, and also the Upper Blossom Lane. So Upper Blossom Lane now sees a lot of flooding, and the same with the Quail Hollow Boulevard. All those would be addressed for the 25-year. And mainly the yard flooding and some of the small summer event floodings will be all taken care of also. Did I answer the question?
Now, what you have to understand is that the way Quail Hollow was built is not the way it would be built if it were being built tomorrow. When a subdivision is built, it has to keep the streets dry, effectively dry, not literally dry. And the houses have to be at least a foot above the base flood elevation. So in a 100-year event floods, your houses should be at least a foot above those floodwaters. That's not what we have in Quail Hollow. It was built at a different time when rules were more lax and there was less attention paid to such details. And, as time's gone by, we've learned from experience. So we can't practically bring your neighborhood up to modern standards, but we can make an approach towards it. And so right now in your neighborhood, you're not seeing a lot of the features that you would have had, it would have been built in if it were being built today or 5 years ago or even 10 years ago. You don't see the attenuation ponds that would have been dug for it. You don't see the drainage system that would have been built for it. You don't see the wetland mitigation that would have been done for the wetlands that have been impacted from the development. But we can't, turn the clock back. But what we can do is make a stab at, taking a situation that I think most folks would agree is less than desirable and suboptimal, and improving it. And then I think there was a question over here. Thank you.
I had two questions. The first one is on the north acquisition, you showed an area to be purchased. I think it was in purple or
Yes, yes.
Can you say about how many acres that is?
Yeah, that's approximately 50 acres, and that's conceptually at this point. Right there. That's what is this what you're talking about?
Yes, sir. And so that would be attenuation. You'd hold the water there until it's been treated and then moves off? Or?
Attenuation, and as you just said, treatment, and then also wetland mitigation would all be occurring there.
Okay. And the second question's a little unrelated. Before selecting this option for the project, did you look at other alternatives?
Yes.
And where can we see that document? Is it on the county's website or something we can take a look at?
Well, I'm not certain of the answer to that question, but I can tell you that our first option was to look here.
I guess my question is broader than that. My question was, before this, not just the particular site that you were talking about now for the purple, that's in purple, I'm talking about the entire concept of the flood abatement. Have you looked, before selecting this option that you were talking about tonight, of all the details that we've been talking about, did you look at other options or other alternatives to do some sort of flood abatement project in Quail Hollow?
Yes, yes. There was a study done on behalf of Swiftman and the county of this watershed approximately 10 years ago. And there are several alternatives that were developed in that study. And we've looked at all of those alternatives. And in fact, what we're looking at here tonight is a modification of a select number of alternatives from that study.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a neighbor that texted me. She's they're watching on the web. They'd like to answer or get a question in.
Okay, yes.
So Warren's.
Okay, do we want to start from the top or do we want to address this first?
All right, well, let's start from the top.
Okay, so let's start. For those in flood zone A.
All right, so for those of us already in flood zone
Does this project elevate some of our chances of flooding? I live at 7546 Pine Lands Drive right now. My front yard is underwater as well as parts of my driveway.
Okay, that's an excellent question, and the answer is no. The county would not undertake a project that would cause adverse impact to someone else for the benefit of another party. So unequivocally, I can tell you that that wouldn't happen.
Okay, second question. Panelist Crane is asking, what kind of timeline are we looking at?
All right, so we have started the process of submitting an application to the SWIFMUD for cooperative funding for fiscal year 23, which starts October of 2022. So if we assume, for the sake of argument, that we receive that grant, then we would start the design process in fiscal year 2023. And that design process we would expect to last 2 years. And at the end of that design process, then after permitting and bidding phase, construction would start. So we're looking at least a 5-year window between now and when the project would be completed.
All right, second question. Are funds available today for actual work?
The county has funds available, but not for this project entirely. If a grant is achieved, then the SWIFMUD would contribute funds, and approximately we're talking about a 50-50 cooperative effort.
Okay. Another question by Don Gertzner. Is there intentions to create stormwater easements for all the areas that will drain to this project in order to make sure they stay cleaned out?
That's a good question. If property owners are willing to grant the county drainage easements, we'll certainly take a good look at that, and that may be something that we would want to do. However, for this project, all that we're looking at right now is acquiring that which we absolutely need to make the project work.
Okay. Panelist Mart Warren is asking, which way is the water flowing from Apple Blossom Lane?
Generally speaking, from northeast to southwest.
Okay. Robert Jones is asking, what consideration have you given to the Tampa Bay water well fields and is its retention of water allowing surface water to back up into homesteads of Saddlewood?
Jaquan, I'll let you address that one.
Not in this area. We have not looked at the well fields and the groundwater impacts.
Okay. They also said, as an example, the storm of 3 weeks ago, the water elevation was 70 plus feet on Shenandoah Run, but the channel marker where creek crosses under Quail Hollow Boulevard showed 64 feet water level.
I can't explain that. I didn't see it. It doesn't sound right.
All right. All right, Thomas Pruitt is asking, where is all the runoff that runs over Pasco Road come from? There's only a small area between Pasco Road and the interstate, yet it floods over Pasco Road and Quail Hollow.
All right. Can we go to the property appraiser site, please?
Yeah, 1 second.
So basically that frame, but from the property appraiser site. All right, now can you put up a 1955 aerial, please? The other one. Yeah. You have a 55? Yeah, 57. Okay. All right, let's see how the 51 looks. See if that's a better picture.
51, all right.
That looks a little better. Now, can you turn off the
Yeah.
streets? Okay, so the question was, where does the runoff come from that comes from the east side of Old Pasco Road, as I understand it? Is that it, pretty much, Taylor? All right. And, you know, you're highlighting Old Pasco Road there. I'll do it with my pointer. This is Old Pasco Road here. Right here. And then this is Alligator Creek as it existed 50 plus years ago. How many notice a difference between Alligator Creek as I just outlined it and the way it is today? Yeah. All right. So what happened somewhere along the line, with or without a permit, I don't know. Alligator Creek went from this to something more linear, particularly as it approached Cypress Creek, and then it just, some point here, just goes due west until it hits the creek. Well, so there was a wetland system that extended up into here that would have been part of the headwaters of Alligator Creek, and you see it extends up into here and up into here. So it doesn't look like that today, but that's where Alligator Creek was rising. Yeah, there you go. If you look even, no, that's here. Can I see what's over here?
Yeah.
Yeah, see all those ponds and that low-lying area. So I would imagine, I don't know, but I would imagine that a lot of this water that came out of here made its way into Alligator Creek and across. So today, now can we put today's picture up?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, that wetland that was serving as like an immediate headwaters, if it's a misuse of the phrase, but work with me, that's still there. So that has not been developed even today. And so a lot of the water that comes out of here goes directly into Alligator Creek. This is Old Pasco Road here, and this is
75.
This is 75. So most of the water, it would appear, that's coming into Alligator Creek from the east is arising east of 75. I can't say that definitively, but that's what it looks like. Next question, please.
Thomas Pruitt also asks, why is Alligator Creek 2 feet shallower than before the work was done?
I don't know that it is. It shouldn't be. We'll look into that and we'll get back to him.
Next question, can the project be done in sections?
Well, the project would necessarily be done in sections because you can't do construction like this all in one day. But the project would not, I don't anticipate that the project would be phased, I think is what they're probably getting at. The project would have one start date, one end date, one contractor. Next question.
Michelle Davis asks, will this project alleviate the flooding at my home at 7546 Pinelands Drive? Right now, I have a 1/4 acre underwater and water is in my driveway.
Can you take me to that address on?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, and now zoom out so I know where we are. Zoom out some more, please. And just a little bit more. So I've lost it. Help me. Where is she? Right there? Okay, so she's right there. Alligator Creek is down here. And then Otter Creek is up here. She's kind of between the two. Dick Ron, do you want to address that? You're in the wrong place, Michelle.
No, definitely. There's going to be some improvements there. There's going to be some improvements in terms of the flood elevations. And if you can send me the address, what we can do, we can follow up with her in terms of how much reduction of the flooding would be on her property. We can give her that specific information.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Next question, please.
Question from Rick Squires, 7039 Sandy Lane. I saw a document not shared that details required easements. Why are only Sandy Lane properties affected and not on the Angus Valley side?
Okay, so I think the question is, you're looking for easements from those of us on Sandy Lane, but you're not asking folks on the Angus Valley side to pony up. So let's take a look. Can we pull up the north easement acquisition map? That's from the PowerPoint. No, I mean the south, the other north. All right. So here's Sandy Lane here, and so these easements, as the gentleman stated, they're all falling within the properties on Sandy Lane and not from the properties over here in Angus Valley. And the short answer to that is the existing channel is running on that side, on the Sandy Lane property side, and the availability for channel improvement tends to lie there. And Decron, I'll let you hit that further.
Yeah, the channel is only on one side of the property, and yet in that area, I think the acquisition is very minimal, very minimal. The channel widening that we're doing over there is tiny a little bit. It's only on one side of the property, the way it is the channel now.
Yeah. Next question, please.
Max asks, is the owner of area in purple a willing seller to create the land for retention ponds?
All right, so go to the real estate acquisition north, please. All right. North, there you go. So I believe the questioner is referring to this parcel here. That's in the Soho development, and I know that the Soho developer and his engineer were planning to participate. Are they online? Adam, are you online? Brian?
Brian Surat.
Surat, yes, Brian Surat.
He is a panelist and can unmute his mic now if he needs to. Brian's online.
Yeah, I'm here. This is
Brian and Adam Harden.
Yeah, Brian's here.
Brian, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you
hear
turn
me?
him up? We can barely hear you, Brian.
He's got to turn his mic up.
Can you turn your mic up, Brian?
I will try.
Turn it up some more, please. I'm sorry?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me out?
Yeah, okay, good. We can hear you. Thank you, Brian. So the question, Brian, was, do we have a willing seller regarding the proposed acquisition shown in purple?
I really can't speak for the seller himself. I know that we are evaluating it for sure.
Good. Is Adam on the line?
He was on earlier. I don't know if he's still on.
Harden. Okay, well, Adam, if you're there, well, he can't unmute himself, can he? But he could chat, right? So Adam, if you're there, send us a chat. All right, well, we'll give him a few seconds. Let's go to the next question, please.
That's all the questions for now, so far.
All right.
Any more questions?
Yes, sir. We have a microphone coming. Where is it? Oh.
A little bit related to that question. I know you're at conceptual and you were talking about moving to design and getting into more specifics when you get to design. The one quick question, is October of 2022 your deadline for submitting to SwiftMud, or October of 2021?
October of 2021 would be our deadline for submitting for FY23 funding.
Okay,
the application is a year-long process.
Thank you. So I guess part of what I'm wondering is you've got county, SwiftMud, developer, residents, and you buy in from everybody.
Yes.
So let's take away county and SwiftMud and just look at developer and residents. When are you going to produce to developer and residents exactly what you want from them in terms of drainage easements or property acquisition? So when do you need them to give you the yes, I'm in, you may have that easement or you may acquire that property?
All right. So the first part, when we're going to tell them exactly what we need, we'll tell them exactly what we need when we've settled exactly what we need, and that may be a negotiation process between the person from whom we need the easement or the real estate. And we've told everyone that we need something from that looks like we're going to need this. And of course, it's still somewhat nebulous. It's a concept plan, and we can maybe make alterations at this stage. And to a question you had earlier, Mr. Miggs, why are you just now hearing about this? Well, this is conceptual. This hasn't been designed. It certainly hasn't been constructed. So you are in on the ground floor as far as that goes. So, but all the folks from whom we need a drainage easement or real estate acquisition have been made aware of the fact that to make this project go, we would need a drainage easement or real estate acquisition, and then it would involve them. Go ahead. Thank you.
So for the district with the cooperative funding initiative, if the application is approved for FY22, so that would be for 23, sorry. Once the application is approved, the funding becomes available per the district on October 1st of that fiscal year, which will be October 2022. And in our contract language, we require that land acquisition be complete by December of that year. So.
I have a question over here, please.
Thank you. Yeah. Just to follow up on
your name, please.
My name is Mike Bayern. Just to follow up on Max's question online, and I understand that the owner of the Soho parcel may not be on here to speak directly, but have you had any conversations with them, and do you believe that they're receptive to selling that purple land to the county? And I guess the second part is the county considering other means of acquisition if there's no cooperation with purchasing it.
All right, well, thank you. I have had conversations with the Soho developer and with the engineer Brian Surratt. And I don't want to speak for the developer, so I refrain from answering your question as to whether I think he's willing to sell. But they're aware, and I think, Brian, if you want to add anything further from what you already said, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, you know, as Brian said, they're considering the matter.
Sure. I mean,
And then this,
he's
Okay, go ahead, Brian.
He's definitely open to it. He's asked me to stay involved and to evaluate the project as more information becomes available. And so he's basically on a fact-finding mission at this point and going to evaluate it.
Thank you, Brian.
And I would like to ask Brian one more question too. A lot of things I'm seeing little bits and pieces to this puzzle, and you know, I'm wondering if anyone has considered a holistic approach to this. You know, connecting all these small pieces to the large picture. The large picture is the 1,000 acres that Soho wants to develop is completely within the Cypress Creek flood detention area and the watershed area. As you can see from all your maps and studies, every bit of water from all our communities all flow to the watershed, AKA where he wants to develop. I think that the best holistic approach would be for the entire parcel, the 1,000 acres that is over 50% wetlands, where 100% of our water flows, to be purchased by the ELAMP program for Pasco County and also from SwiftMud. That would be the best holistic approach to fix this entire mess. Would you like to ask Adam if he's willing to have a no obligation appraisal done of his property to make that happen? That would help us out tremendously.
And Brian, I don't know if you caught that question, I believe, was directed at you. Is that correct, sir? You were directing that to Brian Surratt, is that correct? Sir, to whom were you directing that question?
Brian and Adam Harden.
Okay. So it doesn't appear that Adam Harden is on the line, but Brian, did you hear the question? Did we lose Brian? Is he muted?
All I can hear you.
Brian, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, I can hear you. Did you hear the question?
I did. Yeah, I will definitely pass that question along to Adam. I mean, I can't answer that. But
Understood.
I could certainly pass the message along.
All right. So when we get an answer, if Brian sends an answer to me, we'll make sure, if you give me your email address, if I don't have your email address, please send me an email. We'll make sure that you get an answer. And in fact, if you didn't leave your email address, please make sure you do that on the way out on the sign-in form. Thank you. What we have on the clock, 2 minutes. We started 10 minutes late, so if you want, I'll give you 10 minutes overtime if necessary.
I have a question about funding. Is this 1 year at a time? So basically you apply for all the funds for the entire project, and if the project takes, I think you said 5 years to complete, do we go back for more funding, or?
That's a good question. So the way that would work, at least when we're talking about a cooperative funding grant with SwiftMud, is that the county would ask SwiftMud to fund the project, and then SwiftMud says, well, when are you going to do this? When are you going to do that? When are you going to do that? And they say, okay, so for the first year, you would need X number of dollars. For the next year, you'd need Y, and then the next year, you'd need Z. So that SwiftMud would internally budget that out.
But they approve it all at once.
Yes. Well, let me back up a little bit. With a project of this size, the SwiftMud rules for cooperative funding would require that it go to what's known as a third party for review at the 30% level, 30% design. So if it were to get funding, then it would be designed up to the 30% level, and then it would be handed to a third party. Say, here, take a look at this, see if this makes sense to you, and see if you see a good project here. So if the third party agrees, yes, this is a good project, then it does move forward on to the completion of design and to construction.
So is there any fear that you're going to run out of money somewhere in the middle of this project?
No. No. All right. Is that it? Do we have any questions hanging up?
More online question just showed up. Michelle Davis.
Okay. Michelle Davis is asking, regarding my flooding in Quail Hollow in my home at 7546 Pinelands Drive.
I remember it.
Currently, a quarter acre underwater and water in my driveway. My email, I would appreciate some follow-up, given that we lived here 19 years.
All right. Well, Michelle, follow-up you shall get. I know where you are, and I've been there, and our consultant knows where you are. We're going to take a look at that, and it may be that this project can be modified in a practical way that would bring benefit to your neighborhood. And if that's the case, that's exactly what we'll do. Thank you, Michelle. Is that it for the questions there? Got a question from the room? Thank you.
Because you're in the beginning stages, a lot of people don't know about this. I tried to make as many of our community members aware of what's going on. I had a few residents in Angus Valley who are concerned. They're in the back of Dayflower and Foamflower. Both those roads by Mangrove are continually topped over with water. Is there any plans to give those guys relief? Because a lot of that flows into the wetlands at Armenian Acres, which, according to the map, the coloring, it looks like you already have an easement in some of the wetlands at Armenian Acres. Can you move that water from Dayflower and Foamflower in Angus Valley through those wetlands and then have it move in its northwesterly direction where it naturally flows and get it into Alligator Creek?
That is a project that something we're looking at for the future. And Jakarn, if you want to touch on that, please do so.
Yeah, that is a project that has been identified in the master plan, and it's a project that will be done separately from this effort, but it's been identified, those problems.
Do you have a timeline on that?
No timeline. Unfortunately, just as Rome wasn't built in a day, we can't solve flooding problems, and we can't solve them absolutely anyway, but we're making the progress that we can as quickly as we can.
No, that's fine. I appreciate it. I just wanted to get the community's concerns to you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing them. All right. Well, seeing no other hands up, are we clear, everyone? One more hand.
Fine. So I just want to clear up one question about the funding. So regarding how the district lays out funding for each year, as a project comes in brand new, it's ranked, and most high ranked projects are approved for funding. So with that approval would be usually the first year would be budgeted usually for design, and then in that agreement would include the final amounts, but those amounts don't get approved by our governing board until the following consecutive years in the year that the fundings would be spent. So I just wanted to clear that up, that they do continue to fund the project if it is a multiple year project, but after the first year, they're ranked what we call 1A, which is the highest ranking we can give our projects, and those usually almost definitely continue to be funded. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Thank you, Aaron. Oh, one more.
I have a thing about money. I understood the cooperative education funding, the 50-50 funding worked that way. So essentially, we have to get re-qualified or re-accepted every year, whatever stage we're in. Because my biggest fear is we start things in Pasco and we never finish them. And I'm sorry to say that, but I've been here a long time.
Sure.
I was part of the panel that did that 2011 study. None of that was implemented. So my concern is that we start this, we get easements from people for large ditches and roads to run along ditches, and then the project never gets complete because the money doesn't make it to the end.
All right. Well,
Do we have a backup?
I don't know. Are there backups? Yes. I mean, perhaps the federal government would do something. But if the project gets funding from Swiftwood for FY23, and then if it passes the third-party review, those are the two hurdles. If it passes both of those hurdles, I can assure you it would go to completion and fruition. Well, yes. Right. But it's not going to get past the third-party review if those things haven't happened.
Hi, this is Therese at SwiftMud. I just wanted to add also that if county is granted cooperative funding dollars to complete this project, they'll also be under contract to do those works. And if they're not complete within a certain amount of time, or they don't achieve the benefits that are set out by the project, they would be obligated to reimburse SwiftMud basically. So they have a real incentive to complete the project once it's awarded funding from SwiftMud.
And trust me, the county already would have a strong incentive. So that's why I can say with such assurance that if the project were to get approval for a grant and then were to pass the third-party review stage, once that happened, the project would be going until it were completed, or I retired, whichever happened first. All right. So we have one last one.
Could you zoom in right here on Angus, between Angus and right there, yes. I have right in here, right where the little pond is.
That one?
Yes.
Can we zoom in there, please?
Yes.
Is that enough zoom?
This side of it, that's right. That's the edge of my property. I have 26 acres there. And I have 2 cypress. Nobody spoke of any ecological impact. I have 2 cypress stands running through here and one in the far back that have been drained. They've been drained from the water when they dug this ditch years and years ago. I've been here 38 years. I've watched every season. It's like a small Pantanal. When it floods early in the summer, these cypresses, the only time they get their water, and they're stressed. They're heavily stressed. And in the back, this canal, this Alligator Creek, runs right along the side of my property. And the only time they get water is when it floods. So, and all along this creek is cypress knees. And you can't widen it anymore. You can't take those cypress knees out of there, I don't think. I don't think you should. But I don't know how you're going to put a 50-foot ditch. And if you the ditch cuts across my property, it's already 38 feet wide. I measured it yesterday. Handles an incredible volume of water. I mean, it's moving 13, 14 knots. And I couldn't get to the backside of my property. I have a building over there. I have cow, horses. I got a bridge right now. So it would, a 50-footer, you guys had to bring DOT in and build me a bridge or something.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
And along here, there's not enough room to open that up to 50 feet. You're going to tear out so many cypress and,
all right.
So I don't know what else to tell you about that. But
well, let me address that.
it's high impact.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And you may recall earlier we showed some land that we wanted to acquire for the sake of treatment, attenuation, and mitigation. So the mitigation would be to mitigate for the impacts such as what might happen here. And if the water is moving at 14 knots, that means that it's losing energy pretty quickly as it goes along, which means that it has to be significantly higher up there than it is down here. So it has to have a significant tilt to it to go that fast.
When it breaks from that strip that runs over by Quail Hollow Boulevard, that's what speeds up. It's not speeding through here as much. I've watched it. When it gets there, it is really flying.
Right. But the fact that it's flying tells us that it's losing energy pretty quickly, which is part of the problem here because the water has to stack up to get that energy to flow out. So by improving the conveyance, it would slow down the flow, slow down the energy loss, so it doesn't have to have as much tilt to it. The water doesn't have to be so high over here on Quail Hollow Boulevard to get to Cypress Creek. Right now it has to be pretty high in order to drive it, in order to be driven all the way there. And now as for the cypress trees, they can be taken out.
Cypress trees?
Cypress trees can be taken out. And in fact, if a cypress tree is growing...
What about this with mud? Take them cypress trees out? Those things grow so slow. I mean, I've got trees for 38 years are still only this tall.
Well, let's look at it from the reverse side. Let's say that we consider cypress trees to be inviolate. Never touch them. If that's the case, then all of our flooding problems will only ever get worse because cypress trees will grow up in every drainage ditch in the county.
Yeah.
And then eventually we'll have no more drainage ditches. No, but I understand what you're saying. So
it's quite an environmental impact, I think.
And Decron, I'm going to give this microphone back to you, and you speak to the concerns that we have environmentally.
One thing I want to say is that not everywhere the ditch is going to be the same width. And I think over there it's going to be a little bit narrower than on the upper part of the project where we mentioned by, what did you call it? The Otter Creek. Okay, so there, that's going to be, the biggest impact is going to be there by Otter Creek. Down here, the impact is not that much. Actually, the lower part where we're looking at the yellow line there is just obtaining an easement. We're not even widening the ditch. And within the bank itself, it's a little bit too steep. We're trying to kind of make the banks a little bit less steep.
Is it going to be grassed or is it going to be?
Yes, over here, I'm sorry?
Grassed or concrete, riprap
well,
or
not
anything
necessarily concrete, but some riprap maybe or some other type of embankment where you can strengthen the bank where it doesn't collapse or it doesn't create any erosion. Now, locations like this, usually what we would do once we get into the design of the project, there'll be environmental scientists that will go out there. They will delineate all the wetland location. They look at the health of the cypress trees, and they look at the ditch bank where it is today. And we work actually with SURFMUN in terms of how much impact we can have. And based on that impact, let's say, the first thing you're going to do for you to get a permit, you're going to show to SURFMUN that you are minimizing, first you are avoiding impact as much as you can do. If you cannot avoid the impact, then you're going to demonstrate how you can minimize the impact. Then if you can, and after you demonstrate that you're minimizing, then if you have any type of impact that you're creating, you're going to do the mitigation. Right. And the mitigation is what Donald talked about in terms of the purple property where we're going to plant maybe more cypress trees over there along the banks. So that's kind of what we're looking at it. Now, can I tell you at this point where exactly the impact's going to be? Not quite. We're not there at that stage, but that's kind of the process, how the project's going to move forward. Right. Okay?
Surely.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. And I think we have the last one, the absolute last one here.
And then speaking of flow and losing energy, I have some major concerns on the Soho property. So I don't know if you've been down to Sandy Lane where the creek is there. There's a USGS meter there. I get text messages from it, so I keep up on the data. A few weeks back, we had about an hour and a half pretty heavy rainstorm that went through. At that point, before the rains, we were in a drier spell. The water level at that point went from 58 feet up to 62.9 feet. The cubic feet per square second, I guess, went from 10 to 200, okay? So that's a huge increase. That's a lot of energy moving, and you're concerned about it slowing down. So am I. I don't know if Adam Harden's rep is on the phone.
Brian, are you there?
Well, if you could document this and share it with them.
Sure. Well, this is being recorded, so we will do that.
Okay. Well, what's happened is Adam's partners and himself, they threw some culverts down in Alligator Creek, which is a tributary to Cypress Creek, an outstanding Florida waterway.
It certainly is.
On the weekend, with several dump trucks in about 2015, they backfilled over Alligator Creek. Okay, that's a big concern. As far as SwiftMud's compliance department, I've registered a complaint. In February, Adam Harden received a letter of violation that these culverts and the ditch block was an issue. It's in violation of whatever statute, et cetera.
So it wasn't permitted, I presume?
It was not permitted at all. If he cares about it and wants to have a holistic approach, I think that he needs to work with you, Mr. Carey, and with SwiftMud, and remove that blockage immediately. He's been given since February to do it. He's received more than one violation letter from SwiftMud. His last very lenient option, besides spanning the crossing, was to go ahead and have an engineer run the model, show his culverts in there, demonstrate that he is not affecting adjacent property owners. Months have gone by with zero action from Adam Harden at all. That's unacceptable. It needs to change. I would expect that Pasco County Public Works get on this, as well as SwiftMud Compliance, and demand that that be moved. As we all know, Alligator Creek is the largest drainage system we have to move from our water from our communities to Cypress Creek. That ditch block needs to go, and it needs to go now.
Heard you loud and clear.
Okay.
And from what you said, SwiftMud has heard and has acted. I will certainly make sure that Brian Surak and Adam are aware of what you said. And if you will send me an email, I'll keep you posted on the matter. Now, Commissioner Fitzpatrick is on the line. I believe that she would like to address the group. Commissioner?
Yes, Donald Carey, I would like to take the time to say thank you for hosting this event this evening to make accommodations for everyone so people can and citizens can come in the evening and make it. It's not during business hours. And I would like to again thank Donald Carey, staff, and all of the citizens for coming out this evening. It's very important that we have community involvement and we have open communication lines. So I would really like to continue to see all of the communication streamlined as much as possible. So thank you and have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I would like to echo the Commissioner's words. I want to thank everyone for taking time out of their busy schedule to come here. Some of you had to go through horrible traffic, I understand, and certainly I've heard about some of that. And those of you online, thank you for participating. And for you residents, the largest group of stakeholders, this is either going to be a project that you want and you welcome, or it won't be a project. And if you want it and you welcome it, then let us know and we'll push forward. Yeah. All right. So with that, thank you, everybody. If you want to be in touch regularly, make sure I have your email. My email is on the agenda, which you should have been given. If you haven't, make sure you pick up one on the way out. And again, if you haven't given your email address, please put that on the sheet, and we'll keep in touch with all of you. Again, thank you very much. Thank you, all the participants online, all the panelists. Thank you, Decon. And by the way, I'd be somewhat remiss if I don't mention that we have the developer of Sienna Cove here. Does anybody have any questions about Sienna Cove? You have a chance, like in 30 seconds, to quickly blurt out a question. I guess nobody did. All right. Well, again, thank you, everybody. Have a good evening. Drive safely. Stay safe. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.